Here is the narration. There is a single yellow pigment sitting inside your eye right now, less than 5 millimeters across, doing something researchers believe is genuinely remarkable, and most people over 60 have already lost a significant portion of it without ever knowing. That pigment is the quiet reason some people read comfortably into their 80s while others struggle with glare, blurring, and the slow narrowing of sharp central vision. And here's what makes this story interesting: the foods most associated with protecting that pigment are not exotic, not expensive, and not new. They have been sitting in the produce section and the freezer aisle your entire life. The question researchers are still working to answer is not whether these nutrients matter, the evidence on that is fairly consistent, but whether most people over 50 are actually getting enough of them. The honest answer, based on large nutritional surveys, is that the majority of us are not. So let's take this slowly, because your eyes after 60 deserve a careful, honest conversation. To understand what is actually happening inside aging eyes, it helps to start with the macula. The macula is the small central region of your retina responsible for the sharp, detailed vision you use to read text, recognize faces, and drive. It is extraordinarily metabolically active, meaning it burns a lot of energy, generates a lot of oxidative byproducts, and is exposed to decades of incoming light. By the time most people reach their 60s, the cumulative effect of that oxidative stress begins to show. The protective layer beneath the macula called the retinal pigment epithelium starts to thin. Tiny deposits called drusen can accumulate. And the protective yellow pigment we mentioned, made up of two compounds called lutein and zeaxanthin, has often declined from what it was at 30. This is not a disease in most people. It is biology. But it is also a process that nutrition researchers believe may be meaningfully influenced by what you eat, over time, consistently. Then there is the change almost every person notices somewhere between 40 and 50, presbyopia. This is when the lens of your eye gradually loses its flexibility. The ciliary muscles that squeeze and release your lens to shift focus are still working, but the lens itself has stiffened. Reading glasses become necessary. Text at arm's length goes soft. This particular change is mechanical, it is about the physical elasticity of tissue, and no food is going to undo it. That is an honest caveat worth stating early, so you can trust everything that follows. But presbyopia is only one part of the visual aging story. The other part, the macula, the retina, the pigment density, that is where food-based research has something genuinely interesting to say. Let's start with lutein and zeaxanthin, because these two carotenoids are the most studied in relation to macular health, and the biological mechanism behind them is actually elegant in its simplicity. When light enters your eye, particularly the high-energy blue wavelengths you get from screens and bright outdoor light, it sets off a cascade of oxidative reactions in the retinal tissue. Lutein and zeaxanthin, which physically concentrate in the macula and form what researchers call the macular pigment, act as a kind of internal filter. They absorb blue light before it can cause oxidative damage, and they also function as direct antioxidants, neutralizing harmful molecules called free radicals. Large observational studies have found that people with higher macular pigment density, generally those who consume more lutein and zeaxanthin from food, show a lower incidence of age-related macular degeneration over time. That is an association, not a guaranteed outcome, but it is a consistent and plausible one that has held up across multiple independent research populations. So where do you actually get these compounds? The answer is almost aggressively straightforward. Cooked leafy greens are by far the richest source. A handful of cooked kale, spinach, or collard greens delivers more lutein than almost anything else you can eat. Nutrition researchers consistently identify these vegetables as the most concentrated dietary sources. Eggs are another one worth knowing about, specifically the yolk. The lutein and zeaxanthin in egg yolk is thought to be more bioavailable than the form found in plants, meaning your body may absorb a greater proportion of it per serving. Corn, orange bell peppers, and peas also contribute meaningful amounts. The key word here is cooked or paired with fat. These are fat-soluble compounds, so eating spinach with a little olive oil or an egg alongside your greens gives your digestive system a better chance of actually absorbing what is there. A handful of greens sautéed in a small drizzle of oil, a few times a week, is not a dramatic lifestyle overhaul. It is a realistic, sustainable shift. Omega-3 fatty acids enter the conversation from a slightly different angle. The retina has the highest concentration of a specific omega-3 called DHA of any tissue in the human body. DHA is a structural fat. It literally forms part of the membrane of photoreceptor cells, the rods and cones that translate light into signals your brain can read. As we age, chronic low-grade inflammation becomes more common throughout the body, including in ocular tissue, and research suggests that omega-3s may help modulate that inflammatory response. Multiple large nutritional studies have found associations between regular fish consumption and a lower risk of advanced macular degeneration. The most consistent signal comes from oily fish like salmon, sardines, and mackerel, the kind you might eat 2 to 3 times a week, in portions roughly the size of your palm. Canned sardines, which some people overlook, are actually one of the most affordable and concentrated sources available. There is also the less dramatic but quietly important question of hydration and screen habits. The tear film that protects your corneal surface becomes less stable with age, and many people over 60 experience dry eye symptoms that have nothing to do with diet and everything to do with how long they spend staring at screens without blinking. Research on screen use and eye fatigue is still developing, but the working recommendation from vision scientists is simple. For every 20 minutes of screen time, look at something roughly 20 feet away for about 20 seconds. This allows your ciliary muscles, those same ones involved in focusing, to briefly relax. It does not require an app or a reminder system. It requires a habit. Now for the honest part, which this channel always includes because it is the part that actually earns your trust. None of this replaces an eye examination. If you are over 60 and you have not had a dilated eye exam in the past year or two, that conversation matters more than any food on this list. Early changes to the macula or lens are often invisible to you until they are not, and an optometrist or ophthalmologist can see things that no amount of spinach will reveal. Supplements containing lutein and zeaxanthin exist and are widely used, but the research on supplementation is more nuanced than the research on whole food sources, and the appropriate approach for your individual situation is something to discuss with your own doctor. This video is general education about what the research landscape currently suggests, not medical advice, and your personal health picture is always more complex than any single documentary can address. What the evidence does seem to say, taken together, is this: the eyes you have at 60 are not static. The macular pigment can be influenced by what you eat. Inflammation in retinal tissue is not entirely beyond the reach of dietary choices. And the daily habits of hydration, movement, sleep, and reducing oxidative load through colorful whole foods are not glamorous interventions, but they are the ones that appear most consistently in the longevity research across virtually every organ system, including your eyes. A handful of cooked greens. A palm-sized portion of oily fish twice a week. An egg most mornings. A moment every 20 minutes to look away from the screen. These are not dramatic promises. They are small, honest, biologically plausible changes that decades of nutritional research keep circling back to. And for a smart person who plans to be reading, driving, and looking clearly at the faces they love well into their 80s,